The roar of the motorcycle sliced through the quiet morning like thunder rolling across a clear sky. Sunlight bounced off the chrome as the heavy black bike slowed near the edge of the small neighborhood park. On the bench sat a tiny girl with trembling hands, her shoes coated in dust, her backpack half open as if she had run all the way there. The biker, massive, tattooed, shadow-cast, was the last person anyone expected her to approach. Yet she did. She stepped forward, reached into her pocket, held out a wrinkled $5 bill, and whispered something so unexpected that the hardened Hell's Angel felt the world inside him shift. If you believe in kindness, humanity, and the power of second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. It truly helps the channel grow. Her name was Averly, and though only 8, she carried the weight of someone who had lived far too many storms for her age. Her oversized sweater was stretched at the sleeves, her hair tied into a messy ponytail that hinted she had dressed herself quickly without help. What caught the biker's attention, however, were her eyes, wide, frightened, yet filled with a stubborn spark that refused to go out. The biker, Rogan Maddox, known on the highway as Iron Wolf, had seen faces of fear, but something about this child's desperation carved into him deeper than the ink on his arms. Averly had been watching him for 10 minutes before mustering the courage to walk over. Rogan had parked only because he needed a few minutes to clear his mind from the fight he had with his own life, missed chances, broken bridges, and the feeling that he was good at riding fast but terrible at staying grounded. Yet destiny, strange and precise, had led him right to her. The $5 bill she extended shook between her fingers. Rogan stared at it, then at her, his voice low and gravelly as he asked what she needed. But her reply didn't come immediately. Instead, tears slipped down her cheeks before she wiped them away with the back of her sleeve, as if fighting the shame of crying in front of a stranger. The park around them glowed in broad daylight, with sunlight filtering through tall maple trees, casting dancing patches of gold on the grass. Birds chirped, children played in the distance, and life moved normally, except for these two souls paused inside a moment that felt weighted and quiet. Averly finally managed to speak, explaining that she needed help, real help, because her mother had collapsed back at their small apartment, and no one believed her when she ran for assistance. The neighbors told her she was exaggerating. One even accused her of making up stories, saying her mother drank too much and slept heavily. The landlord wasn't home, and everyone else she tried had brushed her off with a "come back later" or "I'm busy." Averly didn't know what else to do, so when she saw the biker, large and intimidating, she decided he looked like someone grown-ups listened to. Rogan's very breath stilled. This little girl, alone, terrified, unheard, had raced across the neighborhood, and the only person she could trust was a stranger on a motorcycle. She didn't ask him for money, food, toys, or safety for herself. Instead, she handed him $5 and begged him to help save her mother. That was the moment Rogan felt something crack open inside him, a silent realization that sometimes people didn't need perfection, they just needed someone willing to care. The $5 wasn't much. But in that moment, it was everything. It was a child's courage, fear, and love condensed into the smallest but most powerful offer he had ever received. Rogan didn't hesitate. He picked up his helmet, lowered himself down so he wouldn't tower over her, and told her to climb on. Averly struggled with the helmet. It was far too big, but she held it tightly, squeezing her arms around Rogan's waist as he revved the engine and sped through the streets. The wind whipped around them, but Averly held on with a determination that made Rogan more focused than ever. Every turn he took, every stop sign he passed, he rode faster and sharper, not like a rebel of the road, but like a man on a mission. When they reached the apartment complex, Rogan didn't wait for instructions. Averly pointed at the second-floor unit, and he broke into a run. Her mother, Sarah Whitfield, lay unconscious near the tiny kitchen, a spilled cup of tea by her hand. Rogan knelt beside her, feeling the faint but unsteady pulse. He had seen overdoses, crashes, and bar fights gone wrong. He knew danger when he saw it. He lifted Sarah onto his shoulder carefully, telling Averly not to worry, and raced back down the stairs. A few neighbors poked their heads out, shocked at the sight of a biker carrying a fainting woman. But no one spoke. No one moved. And Rogan felt anger burn inside him, not for Sarah, but for the indifference that had let an 8-year-old handle a crisis alone. That he got Sarah onto his motorcycle, steadied her, then summoned an older woman across the street to call an ambulance. She did. Help arrived quickly. Rogan stood by as the paramedics worked, answering their questions with a curt seriousness that made them take him seriously. Avery clung to his leather jacket, afraid she'd lose her mother the way she'd already lost her father years earlier. Once the ambulance took Sarah away, Rogan lifted Avery onto his bike again and followed close behind to the hospital. The waiting hours were long, filled with silence, fear, pacing, and the weight of not knowing. Rogan stayed with her the entire time. He bought her a sandwich she barely ate. He sat with her even when she didn't speak. And even though his life was messy and chaotic, in that small hospital hallway he became something steady for a little girl who had nobody else. When the doctor finally came out, he explained that Sarah had suffered a severe case of dehydration and exhaustion. She'd been working double shifts at a cleaning service and had barely eaten or slept in days. Her collapse wasn't from substance use, it was from fighting too hard for too long. She just needed rest, fluids, and time. Avery broke down in relief, and Rogan placed a careful hand on her shoulder, the sight of her tears carving another permanent mark on his heart. After Sarah woke, she was told the whole story, how her daughter sprinted across the neighborhood, how people ignored her pleas, how a hardened biker was the only one who listened. Sarah insisted on meeting him, her voice weak but full of humbled gratitude. When Rogan stepped into her room, she tried to sit up, but he urged her to rest. He wasn't good with emotional moments, but Sarah's eyes, full of thanks and quiet strength, disarmed him completely. She apologized for not protecting her daughter better, for letting life hit them harder than they could handle, for everything she wished she could have done differently. Rogan shook his head and told her she had done more than enough, more than most. Life had been unfair, not her. Avery reached into her pocket again and tried to give him the $5 back, insisting she had promised to pay him. Rogan crouched down to meet her eyes, took the bill, folded it gently, and handed it back to her. He told her that this money was proof of her bravery, and that she should keep it forever as a reminder that courage didn't need to be big to be powerful. She threw her arms around him, and though Rogan stiffened for a second, he slowly wrapped his arms around the little girl. The hug broke through every wall he had built around himself. He left the hospital later that evening, stepping into the warm daylight feeling like he had lived an entire lifetime in a few hours. For the first time in years, he felt something different, like maybe he wasn't just a man on a loud bike running from his own regrets. Maybe, just maybe, he was capable of being someone good. Weeks later, Rogan visited the family occasionally. He brought groceries, fixed the leaky kitchen pipe, and helped Avery with her school science project. People in the neighborhood started noticing the change in him, not because he sought attention, but because kindness has a way of echoing louder than any engine. Rogan kept the little $5 bill carefully tucked inside his wallet. He never spent it. To him, it wasn't money. It was the day a child's trust made him better. The day he realized that even the toughest souls could be softened by kindness. The day he learned that second chances often come in small hands.